Are you a golfer who early extends? If so, this is a must-watch video. So the term early extension is often perceived as a negative in the golf swing. However, we need to understand that golfers early extend for a functional reason to help them hit the golf ball. So in some respects, it's not a negative unless we get to the root cause. What actually is early extension? Well, when we rotate into the top of the backswing, our right hip or our trail hip will naturally rotate and move slightly backwards if we're turning. As we go to the top of that backswing and we transition down, we see with good movers that right hip almost stay back and we shift into the target to be able to turn and extend through. Whereas the early extension is we'd see the pelvis and almost this right hip, this trail hip, extend away from that back line, so that stick in this instance, early on, in an effort to almost get this club more underneath us, so we're more in a shallow sense. So this early extension of the hips and pelvis is allowing the golfer to try and get shallow in the downswing. If you're a golfer who steepens that club in transition, if you didn't early extend, the club's going to be way out in front and likely hit a lot of fats and fins. So that early extension allows the club to get back onto the ball. So as we can understand there, this is very much a functional pattern, but naturally getting underneath early extending is going to lead to a lot of inconsistencies in strike and start direction and curvature, because naturally if we're pushing up here and the club's having to release early, we're going to get a lot of flipping motion through the ball and all kind of difficulties. So today we're going to look at a really key drill on how we can reduce that early extension and use the ground to aid club delivery. So a really good training aid we're going to look at here is something called a force pedal. This can help us apply pressure through certain areas of our feet in certain manners to help aid force production and movement higher up the body. So how we interact with the ground then has an impact on how the hips and the pelvis can move, and then up into the spine, the hands and the club. So if I was to put this force pedal, in this case, more towards the heel of my trail foot, not fully on the heel, but towards the heel, instantly I can feel where the pressure point is through the bottom of that trail foot. And if I take like a backswing motion, because my trail hip is naturally going backwards through the rotation, through the extension of the right leg, I'm getting some pressure into that pressure point, into that force pedal. So I can feel that. Now, as we know in early extension, this trail hip will want to kick out almost towards the ball. So we know that pressure point is more going towards the toe too early on. What we're looking for and what we'll see with those who don't early extend and use the ground effectively is this trail foot will almost torque the floor. So it will create a torque, a twisting motion like a corkscrew, and apply some pressure in transition into this force pedal. So if we look at this here, we want to feel like we're almost creating that torquing motion. So a lot of golfers talk about the squat in transition. The squat could be this, whereas what we're really talking about is a good squat is how we almost interact with the ground and we create this motion. So the knees separate slightly, you see how the feet are slightly open. This allows then that pelvis to sit back a little bit. We create some traction through the trail foot, and now we're in a place to push laterally, and as the club's coming down, then we can extend and explode out the ground. So that vertical force, the timing of that is going to be much more efficient, and the rotational aspect of the downswing is then going to allow some space for the hands and arms. So when we go here, this naturally is going to want the hands and arms to sit more back and down rather than forward and this vertical pull, which means we have to create a reaction of the early extension. So again, using the force pedal, we're going to go up, and instead of bringing the club down, we're going to feel like the feeling is we torque the floor. So we push hard into the force pedal, we keep the knees separated, and then that force that I'm creating through the bottom of the foot is naturally now creating a movement up the chain into this trail hip, into how the pelvis is transitioning, and now we can feel the hands and arms want to have some space and a place to sit down into a more shallow place to be able to turn and explode through. So using this force pedal is a really, really good feeling of ground reaction forces to aid motion in the golf swing. So as we can see on the force plates where my pressure is, where the dot is, this is telling me where my point of pressure is. So as I go into that backswing again, we can see how that pressure wants to go towards that heel. And we're talking about is we don't want then that to spin out and go towards the toe. We want to feel like we're getting that traction and that pressure staying back. So almost the hip stays back. So now we're in a place to squash, push, shift, and extend. So now we understand that concept and a movement awareness drill that we can use to get the feeling. We obviously now need to put that into a swing motion. As we've talked about, is the early extension is very functional. That helps us hit the golf ball if we're delivering the club too steep. So just by feeling the movement doesn't that automatically mean we'll stop steepening the club or not wanting to do an early extension. So when you practice it, it's a good idea to practice with the force pedal or just something that you can use in a similar fashion. But when you're actually hitting the golf ball, you can't hit this at normal speed, because if you just do this at your normal force output, you're just going to early extend because it's a force pattern. You've got to rehearse this in quite a specific quality manner by both feeling the force pedal pressure but also aligning this with the transition of the hands and the club. So if I was to just stand on this in a normal sense and I was to wind up, I want to be feeling like I'm pressuring in and the hands or the club head is almost going to sit behind me, because now that's creating a place now to be able to rotate freely and extend up, rather than if we do that opposite where I'll do this in an exaggerated manner. This is going to go out. Pressure is going to go here. If I'm bringing down on that path, how am I getting back to ball? The early extension to get under. So the drill I'd be looking for is couple this together, slow motion, almost no more than probably 50% speed. We're going to pressure in and we're going to feel that pressure in transition. We're not trying to hit the ball far, but we're trying to see if we can keep that torque through the trail foot that we know will change the movement pattern. And this will then give rotational freedom, which will give the hands and arms and then the club space to work into impact. If you're interested in using this training aid, I've put a link in the description. And if you found this video useful, don't forget to comment below, let me know how you're getting on. But also watch this video next that's going to talk through how to shift your pressure.